Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. It is Attic Find Friday. I'm really excited about this one. It is a very different one, and I'll get to why that is. Next week I'm off. My wife is having foot surgery Friday at some point. I'm not really sure at what point that is, so I'm planning on just not working that day. Probably not going to put out a video, but I do have a video that I will be putting out. I might even record it earlier in the week and then just put it out on Friday with what I'm calling the failed attic find stories. Stories that people have sent me or I found that seemed like they'd be great for Attic Find Friday that just didn't pan out. And there are, 8 to 10 of those or so. So I think that could be good, and maybe people can help me with what happened with these stories. Still haven't heard from Leighton Sheldon, or is it Sheldon Leighton? Was it last week or the week before that? I'm not important enough for him to get back to, which is understandable. And then I'm going to pack June, five Attic Find Fridays in June. At least 4 of them will be sports card Attic Finds, because I have my first sponsor, and it's just a sponsor for Attic Find Fridays. It's a very brief nibble of a sponsorship on Fridays. At the beginning of those videos, it's going to be 5 to 10 seconds. I think you'll benefit from it. It comes with a discount, and it's relevant. It's not like investing or software or fractional or anything like that. So let's get started. This has been popping up in my news feed for weeks. Several of you have sent it to me. It is a hoarder home, and there's a channel out there called Dark Exploration Films. The star of it is Devin Dark, and he goes out. He's an urban explorer, and he explores abandoned houses, abandoned buildings, all kinds of different stuff. His channel's really fascinating, and he has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, I think, because he has a really interesting topic. He's really well-spoken and respectful of the properties that he explores, and he knows his stuff. He's got good production value. So he discovered a house, and I will link to this. It's a 40-minute video in the description. So please go click into the description of this video and go to the video. The video itself, I'm putting a bunch of screenshots in that I took from the video, but the video has his voiceover. There are a lot of surprises in there that I'm not going to cover here because they, while they interest me, they're not part of what I do on this channel. And it's just shocking, some of the stuff that he finds in this house. So this was a toy store owner or manager who died in 2005. He had what Devin says is 5 or 6 kids. He was in the military at some point, many years before, or decades before. And so Devin's going through, and there's toys and comic books loaded up everywhere, all through the house. And Devin is talking about he turned the house into storage. And I'm looking at it like, he didn't turn the house into storage. This is how the guy lived. He was a hoarder. And so there's completely sealed toys piled up. And Devin said 4 feet high. Some places, sure, against the walls it's 4 feet high, but it's at least 2 feet high pretty much everywhere. In the halls, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in all of the rooms, it is just stacked up with toys. Completely unopened. The comic books aren't protected by anything, but they're also in really good shape. They're stacked up mostly nicely. So they went through the entire house, this abandoned house. He didn't say where it was. There's in the living room, there's even a piano that's covered up with all kinds of stuff. You can barely see it. They go into one of the bedrooms. You can barely see the bed. It's covered, absolutely covered with what appears to be junk. And he goes through some of the stuff. You've got like transformers and all of this stuff completely unopened, presumably has some value. And the articles that talk about how he says it's worth millions of dollars, everything in the house. I really don't think so, but there's certainly some value in there. There's old in the kitchen, goes into the kitchen, and really interestingly, the kitchen is really organized with nice magnets all over the kitchen, but then there's just stuff everywhere. There's even food still in the cabinets. There's a box, I think it was on top of a trash can, 2 boxes, unopened boxes of Addams Family cereal. which I had never seen before, and I don't think Devin had either. At one point, Devin is pointing at a room up ahead, and he can't even get to the room. That's how crazy it was. And he talked about how easy it would be to fall in this house because you're just walking across on stuff. He can't even get to one of the rooms up ahead. He has to try to go around. I don't even think he got to it. In one room, the ceiling, Devin looks like he's maybe, 5'10", 6 feet tall or so. And the ceiling is right at his head. It's so low, which is strange. I think it was on the downstairs too. The comic books, one of the commenters, the most upvoted commenter, said that most of the comics that they saw are like $2 to $4 comics. But there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of them. So you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of comic books. Now you need to parse them out, sell them probably in lots or one at a time. But there's a lot of value there. And then somebody else says that the toys aren't worth that much either. But there are thousands of these toys unopened. So I really don't think you get to millions of dollars. You'd need to have, 1,000 toys or 1,000 comics at $1,000 each to get to $1 million. One thing I found interesting, Devin is not wearing gloves, or maybe his friend wasn't wearing gloves, which I was shocked at. And they're not wearing masks. And they're going through not wearing masks, and this place is filthy and dusty. Devin finally puts a mask on at some point, and his friend doesn't. They found old foreign money. They found a wooden nickel, all kinds of money in there. The Addams Family cereal was from 1991, by the way. So we were talking, if the guy died in 2005, had 15 years at least of toys and food and all kinds of stuff before dying. The video also, again, I really strongly encourage you to go watch it, has Devin's reaction and his friend's reaction to a lot of stuff, and the way they talk about it. It shows his excitement, it shows his disgust at what he finds. And then he finds a ladder up into the attic, and I think, oh, this is going to be the good stuff. But he decides that the ladder might not be strong enough and wants to protect himself from falling. I guess one of his friends who does the same thing fell and injured himself. So he decides not to go up, which was a bummer, but I understand. And then Devin he puts on a mask, which was smart. His friend didn't. And he goes upstairs. And I'm not going to spoil it. Actually, before he goes upstairs, he opens up the door to the basement and decides that he's not going to go down into the basement either because it's open cans of food down there and just a disaster. So probably smart, but I really wanted to see it selfishly. Then he goes upstairs. I'm not going to describe upstairs except to say that there are a lot more comic books, a lot more collectibles up there. But it's also, it's really sad. And I think that, first of all, it's disgusting upstairs and you should watch. But Devin at this point realizes, oh, this isn't storage. This guy was actually a hoarder, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was pretty clear in the downstairs. It's horrific. It's sad that people live this way. And Devin's talking about the kids who had lived there. And he said, these kids had such an amazing life because they had all these toys. But they didn't have any toys. They probably didn't live there when the older man, the guy who passed away, collected all these toys, hoarded all these toys and everything else that's in there. But there's no evidence that they had toys to play with. They were just toys in boxes still. And if they still lived there in 2005 when he passed away, that's not a good life. That is a rough place to live. And he talked about how the guy obviously led a good life because he had plenty of money to buy all this stuff. I don't see it that way. That's a mental illness. That is a very serious mental illness to hoard all this stuff, to spend all your money on this stuff, and then just throw it all on the floor in rooms until it piles up and piles up and piles up. And spoiler alert, there's food, not only in the cupboards. You gotta go watch. It's upstairs. It's shocking and it's sad. And part of me was hoping that he would find some sports cards in there, but part of me was also like, I hope he doesn't, because they would clearly be not taken care of and probably ruined. And I want to know, what do you think about this, about hoarding? I know some of you in my comments have said that you are hoarders before, and I hope that if your house looks like this, maybe you seek out some help, because it's hard. I've known hoarders. Thankfully, I'm not a hoarder, mostly. I have clutter in my house, but not hoarding. What do you think about this? Do you think that there's a lot of value in here? Go watch the video and let me know. I'll link it in the description. And yeah, I've had a lot more stuff this weekend. I think some fun stuff. I've gotten back into Whatnot and buying stuff on Whatnot. I'm finding amazing deals on there. I also am finding killer deals on eBay, shocking deals on eBay that I'm going to go through at some point in the near future, and how I get them, how I find them. And again, spoiler alert, it's through patience for the most part. But yeah. All right. Let me know if you're new here. Click that subscribe button. I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great weekend.